Claire never expected her life to change inside a tiny flower shop on a dusty street corner. One morning, a man in a sharp navy suit stood outside, asking if the pink camellias were real. He looked out of place, like he belonged in a skyscraper, not on a sidewalk. She laughed. "They're real," she said, brushing her hands on her apron. He smiled, thanked her, and left. But the next day, he came back. And the next. Every morning, he asked new questions about flowers. Never bought a single one. Claire didn't know who he was. To her, he was just the silver-haired man with kind eyes who made the mornings feel softer. They talked about music, about broken families, about what makes someone truly kind. And something grew in the silence between their words. She never asked where he went after. Maybe he had a wife or a family. He wore a gold watch, not a wedding ring. But when he started bringing her coffee, one cream, one sugar, always perfect, Claire started to wonder, why was a man like him spending mornings in a place that smelled of wilted roses and fertilizer? On rainy days, he brought her an umbrella. On Fridays, she gave him a leftover bouquet, just to make the moment last a little longer. But behind his quiet charm, Claire could see the sadness. He spoke carefully, looked away often. Once, he whispered, "Money can buy everything, except the things that matter when they're gone." She didn't ask what he meant, but she felt it. Then one morning, he didn't come. The bell above. The shop rang twice that day. Neither was him, no coffee, no silly flower questions. Just silence. She told herself he was busy, but as the days passed, nothing. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. And Claire felt it deeper than she expected. The same ache she remembered from childhood, when her father used to leave for weeks without a word. She kept working, arranged flowers, smiled for customers, but everything felt heavier. She never told anyone about him. Not because she was hiding something, but because she didn't have anything real to show. Still, one afternoon, she took a bouquet of white lilies, his favorite, and left it on the bench where he used to wait for her to unlock the door. The next morning, the flowers were still there, wilted, forgotten. Just like the part of her she wished she hadn't given away. It took Claire almost 2 weeks to stop looking for him. Absence isn't just someone walking out the door. It hangs around like fog that won't lift. She finally deleted his number, even though he never called. She boxed up the paper cup he left behind and hid it with broken vases in the back room. But feelings aren't things you can just put away. One afternoon, on a whim, she typed his name into a search bar. Her breath caught when she saw the headline, "Jonathan Kessler, CEO of the Kessler Foundation, announces withdrawal from public life." There he was, standing tall in a sharp suit, speaking confidently in front of a crowd. The man who sipped her coffee and asked about dahlias wasn't just a stranger. He was a billionaire recluse hiding behind a powerful name. She blinked, trying to connect the man she knew with the headlines. She never asked who he really was. She wanted to believe their time together was simple and real. But now she understood. He never truly left. Maybe he'd been saying goodbye all along, in every silent pause, every gentle look, every time he asked about her dreams instead of sharing his own. That night, Claire lit the candle he once admired and placed it in the window. She wasn't lighting it for romance, but for memory, a small stubborn flame of hope. Then, the bell above her shop door chimed. Claire froze. A boy no older than 10 stood there, wearing a coat too big for his small frame. He held an envelope, quiet and serious, with eyes too familiar for someone so young. Without a word, he handed her the letter and whispered, "He said you'd understand." Claire opened the envelope carefully. Inside, only a few words, trembling with emotion. "You saw me when no one else did. That's why I ran. That's why I'm back. If you still keep the lights on, I'll find my way home." No name, no address. But she knew. The boy smiled softly and disappeared into the fog, leaving Claire holding the letter close to her heart. It wasn't closure. It was a beginning, messy, real, and full of truth. Days later, as dusk fell, Claire wrapped an old book, the same one she once gave him, and the door chimed again. He stood there, older, thinner, carrying only that worn book. No flowers, no grand gestures, just a quiet presence. "You remembered," he said, voice cracking like a vinyl record. Claire didn't smile or cry. She blew out the candle gently and looked at him, simply present. For the first time, the silence between them didn't hurt. It breathed, and she understood. The most shocking way to prove someone wrong isn't revenge. It's becoming everything they never thought you could be. They didn't talk much that night. There was too much left unsaid. Too many fragile threads that couldn't be pulled without unraveling everything. Claire simply handed him the book back and nodded toward the door. Not a rejection, but a clear boundary. If he wanted to come back, it couldn't be dramatic. It had to be real, and real takes time. In the weeks that followed, he did come back. Not every day, not like clockwork, but enough to show he was trying, without assuming he had the right to be welcomed. He didn't bring excuses or explanations. Instead, he showed up with small acts of care, fixing a crooked shelf, refilling, the old kettle sweeping snow off the steps before she arrived. Claire let him, not because she had forgotten the past, but because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing not to bleed every time the past crosses your mind. Still, a question lingered, heavy like fog. Why had he left when she needed him most? And why come back now, after building a world that seemed to have no room for her? The town whispered, calling her a fool for letting a ghost back in. But Claire didn't care. Her heart wasn't naive. It was deliberate. She wasn't taking him back. She was watching, learning if he'd truly changed, if he could live for someone else as well as himself. One snowy evening, Claire found an envelope tucked beneath her shop's door. No name, just her favorite flower drawn in the corner, the same one he'd once sketched on napkins during their quiet afternoons. Inside was a letter, raw and handwritten, confessing the night he left, how becoming the man she deserved felt like drowning. He didn't run from her. He ran from himself. From the fear that if he failed her, they'd both be broken. "I built an empire," he wrote, thinking success would fill the space where courage should have been. "But every building I raised without you felt hollow." Claire sat on the floor, the letter shaking in her hands. After years waiting for answers, this didn't fix everything, but it made sense. And sometimes, sense is the first step toward healing. The next day, he walked quietly into her shop. She handed back the letter without a word. "That was for you," he said, confused. She met his eyes and said, "And this is for you. You need to carry what you caused. Don't leave it with me again." Her voice was steady. No drama, only clarity. He nodded, no longer trying to fix things but willing to hold the weight of what he'd done. In the weeks that followed, the silence between them changed. It wasn't absence anymore. It was processing. He didn't chase her, send gifts, or plead for another chance. He returned quietly through actions he once ignored. Volunteering at the library where she read to children, funding a scholarship in her mother's name, repairing the church roof without telling a soul. Word spread, not by his choice, but because people noticed he wasn't trying to win her back. He was becoming someone worth coming back to. Claire stayed cautious. She wanted proof. Not of love, but of change. Sometimes she'd catch him reading books she recommended, sitting quietly across the street. They didn't speak yet, but in those moments, she began to believe in something rarer than love, redemption without reward. One day, a little girl came into her shop holding a crumpled paper. "He said you'd know what this means," she said. It was a drawing, her flower again, this time with roots and sky, and a line beneath. I grew, and I'm still growing. Whether or not you ever look back, Claire let out a breath she'd held for years. Not because he wanted her back, because, finally, he didn't need her to see his worth. And maybe, just maybe, she started seeing it too. That night, as she passed the street where they once argued under the rain, the warm light from her bookstore reflected back at her. Older, wiser, stronger. Life went on. Customers, the cat curled. On the counter, the bell chiming softly. The drawing sat taped by the register, catching the eyes of every visitor. Some smiled, some asked. Claire never explained. Some stories are meant to be felt, not told. Then, one evening before closing, she found a package by the door. No name, no note. Just a worn journal filled with her own words, quotes she'd written, when hope was still alive. Pages marked with notes and memories, proof someone had read her deeply. On the last page, in neat handwriting, sometimes we don't come back for people. We come back for the parts of ourselves they helped us find. Claire didn't cry. She smiled. Not because she was ready to forgive or fall again, but because something inside her had finally shifted. Maybe their story wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. But one thing was certain. She had never truly been invisible. He had always seen her. It just took losing her to finally understand what he saw. The invitation came on an ordinary Tuesday, slipped inside a cream-colored envelope with no return address, just her name, written in careful cursive. Claire almost tossed it aside, assuming it was just another fundraiser or community event. But something inside her made her open it. Inside was a single line. Come see what I built because of you. No name, no location, just a date. Curiosity stirred. Though every rational part of her warned against going, her feet moved anyway, as if remembering a rhythm her mind had long tried to silence. She arrived at an unfamiliar building near the edge of town, a place she'd never noticed before. It stood tall and glass-fronted, quiet except for the soft sounds inside. Above the entrance, modestly carved, the Marlowe Center for Literacy. Inside, children laughed and volunteers sorted books. On the far wall, a mural stretched from floor to ceiling, bright, moving, alive. And there in the heart of that painted wonderland, she saw it. A tiny drawing of a little girl handing a book to a man in a business suit. Above them, the words, "Someone once gave me a reason to read again." The ground shifted beneath Claire's feet. In that moment, she understood. This wasn't a grand apology or a bid to win her back. It was something deeper. This was what he had done with the pain, the guilt, the regret. This was how he rewrote their story, not with words, but with legacy. A quiet act of redemption disguised as architecture and hope. And though her heart ached, it swelled too. Not every ending needs a kiss. Some just need to be witnessed. And Claire, standing in the middle of his second chance, finally allowed herself to believe she had been more than a chapter. She had been the turning point. She wandered the building in silence, each step echoing not just on polished floors but through the years they had lost. In every corner she saw traces of him, not in photos or plaques, but in details. The reading room walls were painted the same color as her old apartment, where he teased her for painting with too much feeling. The beanbags in the children's nook were arranged just like the ones they'd sat on, dreaming of a family they never built. In a glass case near the entrance, a worn copy of The Little Prince lay open, with a handwritten note. "To the one who reminded me to see with my heart." Her breath caught. He hadn't just built this place to honor her. He had filled it with all the pieces they never finished. She'd once told him legacy wasn't about buildings or bank accounts. It was about people who carry your name in their joy. Now, standing in the heart of his work, Claire realized he'd listened. She wasn't just someone he loved. She was the spark that forced him to become someone better. And though she wasn't part of his life anymore, she helped shape the one he gave to others. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't regret. It was something far rarer: reverence. And in that, something inside Claire loosened. The tight grip she'd held since the day he walked away. She'd spent years trying to prove she was enough, but she didn't need to anymore, because here, in this building breathing purpose, he had proven it for her, without a word. Without asking her to come back, just letting the truth speak. As Claire stepped back into the golden afternoon light, the weight she'd carried for so long no longer felt like a burden. Outside, children chased each other around the garden, laughter ringing like wind chimes, soft, joyful, unburdened. She watched them, recalling all the nights she'd imagined what life might have been if things had gone differently. But standing here now, she no longer mourned that alternate life. She felt something closer to peace. The kind that only comes when you've finally been seen. Across the courtyard, a woman approached, middle-aged, clipboard in hand, clearly a volunteer. "You're Claire, aren't you?" she asked. Claire nodded, uncertain. "He talked about you often. Said you taught him what love without expectation looks like." Claire blinked, unsure what to say. The woman handed her a sealed envelope. "He asked us to give this to you if you ever visited." Alone on a bench beneath an oak tree, Claire opened it. Inside was a single note in his handwriting. "I thought I was building this for the children, but I realize now I was building it for you, for the day you'd walk through those doors and finally see that I never stopped believing in you. I just didn't know how to show it." Claire clutched the letter to her chest, a slow smile breaking through her tears. Life has a cruel way of folding back on itself, but sometimes it surprises you in the gentlest ways. She hadn't come for closure. She hadn't come for redemption, but she had found both, and as the sun dipped lower, she stood, hand over her heart, whispering, "You proved me wrong too."